Hello and welcome back to the podcast. And this week I have a juicy episode for you. It's one of my favorite conversations to have. Definitely. And we're going to explore and have a look at a down to earth look, really, at your higher self. So there's so much noise and craziness around the concept of the higher self. And I feel that a lot of people get very, like lost and confused. And it sometimes becomes this very esoteric, out there, unobtainable, inaccessible energy kind of thing, and it's not very practical, and it sort of doesn't serve much purpose for people when they don't understand really what it is and how to tap into it. So in today's episode, I'm going to run you through, really in as much of a grounded way as I possibly can, because this really is powerful. When you really tap into it, it is divinely powerful, and it really is practical, which I'm going to come to. So I'm going to take you through, what is it, what is the higher self, how do you recognize it, and how does it feel to even connect with your higher self, so you can really know when it's showing up. What is it not, because there's a lot of myths and it can often be confused with other parts of yourself, and that's where we can really get taken off track. And it's life starts to become a bit tricky then, because we start to confuse it. So I'm going to just put some clarity on that for you, how to connect with your higher self and receive the wisdom and guidance it has for you, because it is amazing. And have a look at the practical guidance and how it operates and how that feels to receive it as well. So let's dive in. So, higher self, what is it? So, the way I like to describe it, and one of the first questions that often I get asked is, what is the difference between soul and higher self? So, the soul, imagining you have a soul and you are a soul. So, you as a soul of a higher consciousness really has dropped into this human form that you are in this lifetime. And so, your soul embodies, if you just imagine, almost, if you want to make it tangible, almost imagine this great big light inside of you. It fills your body. That is your soul. And this light, which is an energy, a consciousness, it houses and stores all the accumulated wisdom, experience, things that you've done and learnt and grown and elevated from all of your previous lifetimes. So this is a part of you that's eternal. It will continue on, and so it is so expansive, and that is you. That's the essence of you, and it spans across all timelines, all lifetimes. So that is you. That is the essence of you. Now, your higher self is very much, it's a higher aspect, higher consciousness part of you. But really, what it is, it's a very connected part of you in this current lifetime. So, you, as you are in this body, with the name that you have, the persona that you've taken on for this lifetime, the path that you're here to travel, this very deliberate personality construct that is you in the earthly human physical form, has a higher version. So all it really means is that it's a higher level aspect or consciousness of you in this lifetime. So let's keep it really simple. And the way that I like to, it sort of comes to me like visually, and I channel this for people as well, and it's sort of what comes through. Imagining in front of you there is another figure, like a version of you, same, looks the same as you, just maybe like a higher version of you. So imagining that version of you is a few steps ahead of you, could even be maybe further down the path, it could be a little closer to you, depending on how you feel right now in your life. But you have a higher self. So imagining there's a version of you, another version of you in front of you, already walked the path of the things that you desire, those dreams and desires that you have, those ways of being that you really wish you could have in your life, or maybe you're even creating them now. The next level version of you that you really see in your mind, that is your higher self. And the way I receive it is imagining this higher self in front of you, and imagining that the higher self in front of you is connected to you by a golden thread. So this golden thread is feeding back from your higher self, heart, let's say their heart space, its heart space, into your heart space, and imagining you're connected by this golden thread. So when you suddenly receive an impulse for something, or you know that feeling of I suddenly want more, or you look at something and you see someone else has it and you suddenly feel like, oh, I could do that, I could create that business, or maybe I could have that relationship, or move there, or be this, or do this, or have this in my life. And what that is when it's a very heartfelt, deep desire. And I'm not talking from the ego, I just want it because everyone else has it. I'm talking those deep down desires that you really know, that you really feel deep in your heart and soul, and they stir you up. They like invoke a kind of passion, an intrigue, an interest in you. It's deep. So that when you receive that, what that is, it's an impulse from your higher self, and it's imagining it's literally been sent down this golden thread from your higher self into you, and you've received it and you've picked it up as an idea or a desire or a want. So all this is your higher self is the higher consciousness aspect of you that's already created it. Now, this is why we have these desires, because there's a higher element of us. And this kind of opens up another conversation, which maybe is for another podcast episode, around timelines, that time is not linear the way that we've been taught and the way we perceive here on the earthly plane. Everything's happening all at once. And so, of course, there's another version of ourselves that has already walked the path of what we are wanting, because it isn't future or past or present, it's all happening all at once. So, not to go too far into that, because that's probably a good one for a separate podcast, but it's that premise, right? So your higher self has already created it. So let's say you want to write a book. Let's say you want to create the business. Let's say you want to find your soulmate or twin flame love partner, love of your life, really build something solid with them. You've already received that impulse because your higher self has absolutely done it. So this is why when I share messages like, if you desire it, it's meant for you. This is what I mean. It genuinely and literally is meant for you, because you wouldn't have received the impulse. So your higher self already done it, sending it through to you, and it's our job to really follow that and learn how to almost follow the trail of breadcrumbs, because the higher self comes in with us into this lifetime to really make it easier for us, so that it's already created what we want in the quantum field, and so we bring it into the physical. So it's kind of done the job for us, but our mission in and our role is to really follow that and allow ourselves and give ourselves permission to really follow these desires, right? That's so important. So that's what the higher self is. So how do you recognize it? How does it feel? So even if you think you don't, you will definitely have had times in your life where you've absolutely been very, very connected into your higher self. So I'll give you a few examples, like the times in your life where you've just felt very on track, very inspired, things are flowing, you're in your power, you're just in a kind of flow. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything is perfect and going perfectly well for you, because sometimes, life happens and all sorts of things are around us. But it's that feeling, that deeper feeling that everything's okay and we've got this. So it's like that part of you that just knows better. So another example is you will definitely have had times where you've had a realization or an epiphany of some kind, where you've sort of gone, yeah, I know I really need to be doing this. But when I say need, it's not like a push through, like whipping yourself with that. It's like a deep, deep, yeah, I kind of know. Like, I'll give you an example, my book, which I've been procrastinating on and continuously doing the inner work to overcome all sorts of things. When I tap into that, I know that I'm absolutely supposed to be writing this book. My higher self, like, it's very clear. Like, if I was my higher self, if I was acting as her, definitely will have had a book written and out there in the world to do its magic. So even if sometimes I don't fully trust it, or even though sometimes I procrastinate or I don't fully do it and I don't follow that guidance all the time, there is a knowing inside of me that I know better. I absolutely know that's part of my mission here. It's just I've got to kind of get my ass into doing it. So it's that kind of feeling where you sort of know what you really need to be doing, or what you are being called for, and it's that part of you. Just think of it as the wise part of you that knows better. It's always that part of you that says to you, yeah, you should really not do this. You should really not connect with this person because you already know this is no good will come from this. And then maybe you don't take heed of that and you do your thing. And then you realize later, oh, I was right all along. I kind of knew that. Sometimes that's your higher self. So you've definitely had moments of connecting in. But how does it feel? It just feels very aligned. It feels easy. It feels, of course, that's for me. Of course, that is for me. I feel it. I feel it. So it's a very solid, I think it's a very solid, grounded feeling actually. When you really tap into your higher self, it's not so hyped up, frenzied. It's very, and it is magical, yes, but it's a very grounded energy. It's a really good way to feel. So what is it not? And I want to just briefly talk about this because sometimes people confuse the higher self, because we're talking about doing big things, the next version of you, the higher level version of you. Sometimes we confuse it with other parts of ourselves. So I'll just run through very quickly maybe the three most common parts that people confuse it with. So just by talking about it means we can shine a light and you can recognize it. So the inner critic is that part of you that criticizes and sort of beats you up for not doing things or haven't done it the way you should have done, etc. So the higher self is never critical. So if you feel, as you're tapping into your higher self, you start to feel criticized in some way, or it feels like it's sort of telling you off or pulling you up about things in a critical way, that isn't higher self. Your inner critic is most likely running the show. So know that your inner critic comes from your thoughts, your beliefs, mindset stuff. And we have reasons for that as well. But just know that it's not about the higher self, because your higher self can definitely pull you up on things. Like my higher self is like, yeah, it's really time to let this go and it's time to now step into this. But the higher self never does it. The energy of the higher self is never critical. So when you receive the guidance, there's almost this feeling of, yeah, that is true. it's like a really great friend, loving friend, sort of bringing it to your attention, but it doesn't feel like a criticism. It just feels like, yeah, that is absolutely spot on. That is pure truth. So pure truth, divine wisdom, and higher level, higher consciousness guidance never feels critical. So just be aware of that when you're trying to tune in. The second one is perfectionism. So a lot of us have this perfectionist energy. I definitely have. It's like wanting to get things just perfect, wanting to get it right. So again, with that, there's a great side to that as well, because attention to detail, always very helpful. But when the perfectionist part starts to pile the pressure on and tells us we've got to do it exactly like this or it's not good enough, that is perfectionism. So just be aware, it's not higher self. Your higher self isn't about you have to get this perfectly right. Perfectly right is a very human construct. So it's really helpful to remember that your higher self, because it's a higher consciousness is always giving us the message that there is no right or wrong. There are just choices and there are just experiences. And then we shift trajectory and direction in accordance with, does this feel good? No. Okay, we'll move over here. We'll make different choices. So just look out for the energy. It's never putting pressure on you. It's never expecting you've got to get it just right. It's just about moving forwards and doing whatever it is that's needed in any given moment. All right. So that's, just be aware of that, because that one trips a lot of people up. I see that a lot. And then the third one is the achiever part of ourselves. So a lot of people, the people that tend to come into my space, because you're usually ambitious, visionary, creative, you just want to shift things and create things. And I'm the same. We have this kind of A-type personality that wants to do the best, wants to achieve, wants to hit things at a high level, a really high standard. And that is all perfect. That is all great. Use the word perfect there. That is all wonderful and fantastic to have. But just be aware again, the higher self isn't going to put the pressure on you. So let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say you tune in and you feel like you've got guidance to, I'll use the business, like creative business. You feel like you've got the guidance to do a blog, right? And you feel that very like, yeah, like very sort of deeply soul aligned, it's your higher self guidance, and you feel like, yeah, writing a blog is absolutely part of my mission. I'm really being called for this. This feels really on track, on purpose. So that's your higher self. When you start to go into, okay, so now I'm going to write a blog, I have to do it. I have to make sure I get one out every single day. I have to make sure I post at this time. I have to make sure blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly you're putting a load of pressure on it. Just notice that achiever part of you kind of kicking in, because again, what your higher self doesn't do is pile on the pressure and make these rules about it, and it doesn't tell you that you've got to be at this standard and do it, because your higher self is the higher consciousness. Your higher self already knows, if you just follow this is you expressing yourself at the highest level. So you don't need to worry about getting it just perfect and just right. It's like, and doing it at this high level only. Of course you're going to be operating at a high level because it's your higher purpose. So there's more to say on this, but just to be aware that your higher self generally doesn't put pressure on you. It doesn't criticize. It doesn't need you to have it perfect. It's not always about you've got to do, because a lot of the time, or some of the time, your higher self guidance is not to do things. Sometimes it's to not do things. Sometimes your higher self guidance is to release it all and have a break, get off social media for a day or two. It could be, have a rest now and come back to this. So sometimes when I'm trying to figure things out and I just go back up into my head a little bit, if I was to call on my higher self and ask for guidance, sometimes the guidance is leave this and come back to it tomorrow with a fresh perspective. So just be aware, your higher self is the higher aspect. It's the higher level of you that's done amazing, beautiful, creative, expansive things, but it is not about pressure, and it's not always about doing. So just be aware of that, and then you can kind of navigate a lot easier, I think, a lot easier. So how to connect with your higher self then and receive the wisdom and guidance. So I like to keep this super simple. So this is something that every single person is capable of doing. So like I said, when I channel, I can channel higher selves for people often in a session. If I do a channeled session for someone or an activation, most of the time I will tap into the higher self, because the higher self just is there, it's present, and I get to tap into beautiful wisdom and guidance. But I want you to know that you can also do this yourself. This is accessible to everyone. And really, it's just a practice of just getting quiet. You always have to kind of get into a quiet space and just take a breath, a bit like if you meditate or just have some thinking time, just quietening down yourself, getting into a nice space, especially when you're just connecting with this for the first time. And literally, how I like to do it, how I started doing it, was journaling some questions and receiving answers. And now I just ask and I can get it. But you can also reflect and just receive the answers as they come to you, play around with it. But really, you're just asking the question. And what you can do is you can visualize, you can just sense it, you can imagine it, whatever way fits for you, but you're just calling in. So, what you can even do is state it. I now call in my higher self. I call in my higher self and ask a question as if you would ask anyone a question. So, I like to, typically say, okay, higher self, what guidance do you have for me on this? So let's say if I'm stuck on something, or I just want some, not really quite sure about something, and I'm debating, higher self, what guidance do you have for me on this? And I'll just listen and I'll see what comes through. And this is really about trusting what you receive. And the more you practice, the more and more strong this connection becomes. And you can really start closing the gap between you and your higher self. And ideally, what we really want to be doing is living our lives more as our higher self, so that we are, living out our soul purpose, right? Our missions, why we came here, the things that we wanted to experience. So I like to ask it that way. Higher self, what guidance do you have for me on this particular thing? The other way I like to do it is journaling it out, writing it out. And don't be afraid of journaling, because it's just writing it out. The reason writing it out works is because sometimes you can bypass those parts of your mind that keep you quite conscious, and the unconscious can just come out a lot easier. But if you don't like journaling, you can just ask this as a question. So what I like to do is, okay, if I were to act from my higher self, if I were to step into my higher self, what would I be doing? What would I be thinking about this thing? What would I be feeling about this thing? And then what choices would I make? And I identify those things. And then the act of just really seeing that, it closes the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And then you have an option of really grabbing those things with two hands and actually, acting on them, taking those aligned steps. And again, like I said, it's not always about do, do, do. Sometimes it's higher self. If I was my higher self today, if I was acting from that place, what would I be thinking? So if I asked myself, if I asked myself this morning, which I sort of did in a roundabout way. I woke up feeling very tired, really just like, whew, not much energy today for various reasons. I was like, oh, I really don't feel like doing all the things I had planned yesterday when I had a load of energy, but I knew that some of it had to be done. So if I asked my higher self, okay, what would I be, if I was my higher self, what would I be thinking about this? So if I was my higher self, I'd be thinking, well, with this energy, I'm going to utilize it properly and I'm not going to push myself. I'm going to make sure I rest, but I'm also going to make sure I just do these parts that are really important for me and then get enough rest and then review it later and see what I feel. So that was great guidance and wisdom. And notice the higher self wouldn't have said, you've got to do it anyway. So if you get that kind of guidance, like even if you're tired or you're not feeling it, your higher self won't say, well, just put a bastard on and do it anyway, because that's an achiever way. So your higher self will always give you the highest level wisdom and guidance. So I always just like to ask daily, and I kind of do this more and more daily now. Right. So in my business, okay, if I was acting for my higher self, what would I be doing right now? And often it's things like, you'd be sitting down writing your book. You would be doing that live stream you've been putting off. You'd be, taking that action, or you would be resting and trusting that by resting, good things can still happen. You don't have to be, hustling all day long. So it's a brilliant practice. And the more I do it, I find that it's expanding me. My life is so different this year than it was last year. I'm stepping up, I'm doing more things because I'm utilizing that beautiful higher self wisdom and guidance that you cannot access from your personality, because our personality is so heavily influenced by thoughts, beliefs, and earthly stuff, human stuff, baggage we've picked up along the way. So your higher self is the beautiful part of you. It also gives you very practical guidance too. Like I said, so sometimes, your higher self will give you deep spiritual truths. Sometimes it will say, remember to eat vegetables, right? It can be really practical when you tap into it. And also, higher self often has a sense of humor. I notice when I channel mine, I'd sometimes do it for my husband, and we have a great laugh about it, because it's sometimes when I channel for someone else, I'll just burst out laughing before I share like what the higher self just said, because the higher self, being the higher consciousness, can really see the light, fun, humorous side of the experience. So it's quite fun to tap into the higher self. I love doing it with people in sessions. It's one of my favorite things. So just remember, it's light, it's powerful, very powerful. And yeah, sometimes the higher self is super serious about things, but there's a lightness. And the thing to realize when you connect with your higher self, yeah, there's a lightness. You often feel relief, reassurance, even if it's around things that are going to bring you out of your comfort zone. There's a recognition of, yes, this is for me and this feels good. This feels expansive. So higher self is always very expansive. It's a brilliant part of ourselves. So that's why when I say a lot, when I talk or I write or I share posts, and I often say, somewhere in my messaging, that you are amazing, powerful and magical. I repeat that a lot. And I want to let you know, I'm not saying that because I'm being nice. I'm saying that because I literally mean it, because you have a higher self, regardless of where you are right now, whether some of your parts of your life are catastrophic, like mine have been in the past, whether you're breaking through something, you're struggling, you're sad, you're in a magical, elevated way, wherever you are, it doesn't matter, because there is a higher aspect consciousness of you, which is always amazing, powerful, magical. and accessible to you. So know that you have this. It is on tap. It's right here with you. Your higher self accompanies you. And how amazing is that? We're on this weird earth journey in this human body, experiencing all these crazy things. And we have a higher self that has come along with us for the ride that we get to tap into. It's like our supercharged kind of personal assistant, right? Divine personal assistant that's really done all the work for us. And it's just, they are just moving and channeling the information to us and giving us all this guidance and wisdom. So know that you have dreams and desires that get filtered down to you. These are meant for you. You wouldn't be having them otherwise. So trust it. And can you allow yourself to open up into that possibility? Can you allow yourself to give yourself even permission to accept what comes through? If you get a vision, if you get an idea, if you get an impulse, a desire, a sudden thought around, "Oh, maybe I could dot dot dot," know that this is coming from your higher self. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. I hope this has helped you understand it a bit more, tap into it, look at it as a more practical, maybe grounded part of us, our human experience. We get to tap into it. It isn't so out there and crazy. If you have any questions on this, feel free to message me. And of course, if you want to get into a channeled session with me, I offer these. It's one of my kind of 3 core offers that I always have available. And it's a Starseed/Soul activation session and channeled session. So depending on what you need, what you're looking to, get guidance around, we can tap into your soul, your nature, whether that's a star seed or not, your mission, your higher self, definitely some of your soul blueprints, all of these things. So there's a lot of info on my website. So just head over there if you're interested. You can find it on theawakerevolution.com/session. Or if you just go to the website, hit ways to work with me, you'll find it there. If you for some reason can't find the information, message me. I can send you the link. But just so you know that it's there, that's what I do. I love those sessions. But like I said, you can absolutely still access your higher self anytime you need. It's always there for you. So I send you so much love, and I'll talk to you soon.